In the idyllic village of Palmwood along the Sunshine Coast of Queensland, Australia, resided a quaint historic community of merely 6,000 inhabitants. Nestled in a serene valley, Palmwood sat approximately 10 miles away from the radiant beaches adorning the coastline, offering a tranquil retreat from the hustle and bustle of urban life. On December 7, 2003, 13-year-old Daniel Morcombe embarked on a mission. With his parents away for the day, Daniel seized the opportunity to purchase Christmas gifts for his family, consisting of his parents and 2 brothers, from the shops at Sunshine Plaza. Before his departure, he bid a swift farewell to his siblings and ventured out the door, making his way to the bus stop beneath the Keel Mountain Road overpass. Daniel patiently awaited the arrival of the 135 bus, a routine he had followed countless times before. Unbeknownst to him, the 135 bus had encountered mechanical issues, rendering it unable to reach its designated stop. Despite the setback, Daniel remained undeterred, passing the time by etching patterns in the dirt with a makeshift stick. At 2:10 p.m., a substitute bus approached the overpass, yet it failed to halt as the stop was unofficial, and the driver was already behind schedule. Nevertheless, the observant driver noticed Daniel clad in his vibrant red Billabong t-shirt standing by the roadside. Radioing the transit center, the driver requested that the next bus be informed to pick up Daniel at that location. However, the driver also spotted a figure lurking in the distance behind Daniel, leaning against the concrete wall of the overpass. Adjacent to the bus stop, a blue car sat parked, with another individual standing beside it. A mere 10 minutes later, when the subsequent scheduled bus arrived, both Daniel and the individual behind him had disappeared without a trace. Aware that Daniel was expected home by 4 p.m. that same day, his mother drove to the bus stop and patiently waited for his return. Along the way, she noticed a stranded bus on the roadside. Consulting the bus schedules, she discovered that the final bus of the day was slated to arrive at 5 p.m. Remaining vigilant, she awaited Daniel's arrival. Yet when the last bus pulled in, Daniel was nowhere to be found. In a state of panic, Daniel's family embarked on a frantic search along the bus route, to no avail. Despite his mother's efforts to reach out to the bus company, the drivers operating that particular route claimed they had not encountered Daniel that day. As the clock ticked past 7 p.m., Daniel's distressed parents contacted the authorities to report him missing. The thoroughfare beneath the Keel Mountain Road overpass buzzed with activity, with a continuous stream of vehicles passing by each hour. The following day, law enforcement held a press briefing appealing to the public for any information regarding Daniel's whereabouts on that fateful day. Recognizable by his striking red shirt, numerous eyewitnesses recalled spotting him at the bus stop. A multitude of tips flooded in, with some motorists recounting sightings of him conversing with an unidentified individual on the grassy verge near the bus stop. Another individual was reportedly seen standing in proximity to a dark blue sedan parked nearby. Additionally, witnesses recalled spotting a white 4-wheel drive vehicle in the vicinity. This off-road vehicle boasted a distinct feature: a half-sized air snorkel protruding from the driver's side fender wall. In response, law enforcement and emergency service volunteers coordinated extensive search efforts in the area, deploying helicopters, sniffer dogs, and divers to scour waterways. Despite widespread distribution of flyers throughout the state, no significant leads emerged. On December 19, 2003, Daniel's twin brother, Brad, marked his 14th birthday in solitude for the first time. Over the ensuing year, the Morcombe family established the Daniel Morcombe Foundation, receiving donations from across Australia to aid in the search for their missing son. Volunteers plastered posters across the state, while the foundation funded television advertisements to maintain public attention on the case and promote child safety initiatives. Police disseminated a composite sketch of the individual observed behind Daniel on the day of his disappearance, along with images of the vehicles believed to have been present nearby. Despite receiving thousands of tips, investigators remained no closer to locating the missing boy. As time elapsed, Daniel's parents reconciled themselves to the grim likelihood that their son would never return home. However, they remained resolute in their determination to apprehend those responsible for his demise. In a bid to encourage cooperation, the state of Queensland offered a reward of $250,000 for any information leading to the arrest of the perpetrator. Subsequently, a generous private donor escalated the reward to $1 million. In an effort to trigger recollections among motorists, investigators crafted clay models depicting both Daniel and the individual seen standing behind him, positioning them beneath the overpass. Despite conducting in excess of 10,000 police interviews and receiving over 20,000 calls via a dedicated police tip line, authorities remained without a definitive suspect. 7 years following his vanishing, the Morcombe family pursued a coronial inquest. This formal public inquiry aims to ascertain the circumstances surrounding death and establish the where, when, and how of the demise. Witnesses, including the bus driver who encountered Daniel that day, and a woman who observed the man near him, were summoned to provide testimony. The inquest facilitated the interrogation of all individuals of interest amassed during the investigation. Many of these suspects were known pedophiles residing in the vicinity, among them Brett Peter Cowan, who would have been 34 at the time of Daniel's disappearance in 2003. Despite Brett Cowan's upbringing in what appeared to be a respectable Catholic household in Brisbane, early signs of turmoil emerged. Though some remembered him as an average teenager, others remembered him as a bully who would flaunt his sexuality by proudly showing his fellow classmates his erect genitalia. He dropped out of school in 10th grade, not being able to hold down a job and grappling with substance abuse. At just 18, Cowan committed his first sexual offense, luring a 7-year-old boy into a public bathroom and brutally raping him. Then going home and casually watching TV afterward, he showed no remorse. Although he was arrested and convicted, he served only 1 year of his 2-year sentence for the crime. A few years later, in 1993, a more viscous attack followed. Cowan took a 6-year-old boy to an abandoned car yard, subjected him to a violent assault, and left the bleeding child with a punctured lung to die in the wilderness. When the boy made his way to a gas station, his injuries were so bad that emergency crews assumed he had been hit by a car. Fortunately, the boy managed to survive the harrowing ordeal and positively identified Cowan, who initially denied any involvement, expressing to the police, "I hope you catch the bastard." However, when confronted with DNA evidence retrieved from the boy's underwear, Cowan eventually confessed to his culpability. Despite being sentenced to 7 years in prison for the crime, he served only half of his imposed term. Psychiatric evaluations conducted during his time behind bars depicted him as a pathological liar, leading a parasitic existence devoid of empathy for the suffering of others. According to his psychologist, Cowan harbored the belief that his victim would refrain from reporting the assault because he probably enjoyed the experience. Upon his release in the late 1990s, Cowan underwent what he described as a religious awakening, portraying himself as a reformed individual. He relocated to live with pastor relatives, married a devout Christian woman, and became a father to 2 children, seemingly achieving a semblance of stability for a brief period. But by 2003, his old ways resurfaced. Cowan left his faith, left his wife, and began searching online for hardcore homosexual relations using the profile name Shadow Nunya Hunter. Veteran investigators Dennis Martin and Ken King had previously interviewed Brett Cowan years earlier regarding the disappearance of Daniel Morcombe. This interrogation occurred a mere fortnight after Daniel vanished. Upon meeting Cowan, the detectives immediately noted his ownership of a white Mitsubishi 4-wheel drive vehicle, equipped with a black air snorkel on the driver's side, a detail consistent with a witness account placing such a vehicle near the overpass where Daniel was last seen. Additionally, they observed recent alterations to Cowan's appearance, including the transformation of his long, unkempt hair into a short crew cut, and the recent removal of his scruffy beard and mustache. Cowan provided an alibi during the interview, claiming he was out of town, a route that coincidentally traversed the underpass during the precise time frame of Daniel's disappearance, leaving a 45-minute gap. Given Cowan's troubling background, the detectives questioned him directly about his potential encounter with Daniel beneath the overpass that day, to which he conceded, "I might have stopped and looked." A mere 2 weeks into the investigation, the detectives felt confident they had identified Daniel's abductor. They meticulously documented their conversation, photographed Cowan's vehicle, obtained tire imprints for comparison with those found at the bus stop, and compiled a comprehensive report urging immediate action for Cowan's arrest. However, when Detective Sergeant Michael Condon received the report, he encountered a significant obstacle. Condon, along with the incident response team under his command, had already honed in on another individual as their primary suspect. Douglas Jackway, a convicted pedophile released just a month prior to Daniel's disappearance, fit their profile. Jackway also possessed a blue sedan resembling the vehicle reportedly seen near the bus stop. Consequently, the incident response team directed all their efforts towards investigating Jackway for several months. Unfortunately, once Douglas Jackway was cleared of suspicion, the report implicating Brett Cowan as a suspect had been overlooked. Although Cowan could have been apprehended just 2 weeks after Daniel vanished, it wasn't until 7 years later, during a coronial inquest in 2010 that he was brought in for questioning. Over the course of 6 months, investigators diligently interrogated suspects and known pedophiles in search of any leads. After numerous interviews, Cowan emerged as the primary suspect, admitting to having driven past Daniel while he stood by the roadside. However, the passage of time and a lack of conclusive evidence posed significant challenges for prosecutors. They devised a strategy. In the summer of 2011, a sizable contingent of undercover officers devised a clandestine operation known as the Mr. Big technique. Over several months, an extensive team of undercover operatives meticulously constructed a fabricated criminal syndicate resembling a mafia organization. They orchestrated fictitious criminal enterprises engaged in activities such as burglaries, large-scale drug transactions, diamond smuggling, and prostitution, creating an illusion of authenticity. The operation commenced when Cowan embarked on a flight to Perth, oblivious to the fact that an undercover police officer occupied the seat beside him. Over the course of the lengthy flight, the two engaged in conversation, initiating the development of a rapport. Cowan was led to believe that his seatmate belonged to a powerful and affluent organized crime syndicate. Intrigued, Cowan expressed eagerness to become involved. For months, undercover agents cultivated Cowan's trust by assigning him various minor tasks designed to immerse him deeper into the fictitious criminal organization. He was tasked with tasks such as picking up and delivering packages purportedly containing illicit items like firearms or narcotics. Unbeknownst to Cowan, these packages were entirely benign. Additionally, he was instructed to collect purported debts from individuals, adopting an intimidating demeanor under the belief that he was assisting the criminal gang. Cowan engaged in simulated black market weapons transactions orchestrated by undercover officers both buying and selling replica firearms. During these staged operations, he was transported to Melbourne and accommodated in opulent 5-star hotel suites, enhancing his sense of status and significance within the fictitious criminal organization. At one juncture, he was instructed to unearth a package clandestinely buried in a public park. Under the cloak of darkness, agents observed as he excavated the package, interpreting his actions as demonstrations of loyalty and resourcefulness. As months elapsed, Cowan's involvement in successive tasks gradually eroded his reservations regarding the organization. His immediate superiors acknowledged his commendable performance, indicating that he was now deemed suitable for an audience with the elusive Mr. Big. Cowan was subsequently flown to Perth and provided accommodation in a covertly surveilled 5-star hotel suite. Upon Mr. Big's arrival, Cowan received accolades for his contributions and loyalty. However, Mr. Big conveyed disconcerting allegations, suggesting Cowan's involvement in the high-profile disappearance of Daniel Morcombe. Mr. Big provided assurance that Cowan's potential involvement in the crime wouldn't pose a significant problem. However, he expressed concern about any past actions of Cowan that could potentially jeopardize the organization's integrity. Stressing the value of transparency, Mr. Big encouraged Cowan to disclose the truth. By doing so, Mr. Big suggested, both he and the criminal organization could proactively address the situation and mitigate any evidence implicating Cowan in the crime. In grim detail, Cowan confessed to encountering Daniel at the bus stop that day under the guise of seeking directions. Subsequently, he extended an offer of a ride to the mall, but instead diverted to an isolated, derelict rural dwelling where he perpetrated the assault. When Daniel screamed and fought back, Cowan claimed he panicked, choking the child to death before he had a chance to molest him. Cowan then confessed to transporting Daniel's body to his vehicle, dragging him to a nearby embankment and hurling him over the precipice before crudely concealing the naked remains within the adjacent bushland. Employing a branch, he endeavored to eradicate any traces of tire marks left behind. Weeks later, returning to the site, Cowan discovered that animals had significantly consumed portions of the body. Subsequently, he used a shovel to fragment the skull, assuring Mr. Big that he left no DNA evidence at the scene, and disposed of the boy's clothing in a nearby creek. Cowan maintained that his actions could not be traced back to him. Despite Cowan's assurances, the fabricated crime boss insisted on Cowan's return to Queensland to disclose the disposal site to organization members for thorough eradication of evidence. Subsequently, Cowan and several undercover officers reconstructed the crime scene. They drove to the locations pivotal to the crime, where Daniel was abducted, the house where he was strangled, and the wooded area where his body was heartlessly discarded. Leading the undercover investigators to the site, Cowan revealed 3 bones and 2 shoes resembling those Daniel wore on the day he vanished. Upon confirming the bones as Daniel Morcombe's remains, Detectives unveiled their true identities and promptly arrested Brett Cowan. He faced charges including murder, deprivation of liberty, child stealing, indecent treatment of a child under 16, and interfering with a corpse. Subsequent weeks saw exhaustive searches of the vicinity, yielding the discovery of 17 bones belonging to Daniel, including a rib, hip, leg, arm, and vertebrae. Brett Cowan's trial commenced in February 2014, during which he pleaded not guilty despite overwhelming evidence. The prosecution presented 200 exhibits and called 116 witnesses. On March 13, 2014, Cowan was convicted on all charges. The following day, March 14, 2014, he received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Additionally, he was sentenced to 3.5 years for indecent dealings with Morcombe, and 2 years for interfering with his corpse, to be served concurrently.